ASRock's AB350M HDV MicroATX AM4 motherboard. With a screwdriver, counterclockwise the 4 screws to uninstall the AM4 mounting brackets. We will keep the motherboard's backplate, which is underneath. This format of standoffs is required for the CPU cooler. AMD's 4-core Ryzen 3 1200 14nm at 3.1 GHz, turbos at 3.4 GHz. Move the CPU lever to the side, then pull the lever up. Now let's install the CPU. Align the CPU's yellow triangle with the pin 1 triangle. Some of the boards like this one may also have a corner arrow. Push the CPU's lever back down to finish installing the CPU. AMD's Wrath Stealth with pre-applied thermal paste. My first attempt installing the AMD's Wrath Stealth blocked the DIMM slot, which I couldn't install one of the RAM. So I cleaned up the thermal paste from the heatsink and CPU with Arctic Clean to use my Arctic MX4 thermal paste. Learn from my mistake because the pre-applied thermal paste is okay. Apply a pea size of thermal paste onto the center of the CPU. Remember the motherboard's backplate 4 standoffs? Align the CPU cooler with the 4 standoffs. With these particular CPU coolers, remember to keep the AMD logo away from the DIMM slot so it can install 2 sets of RAM. Now clockwise the CPU cooler's 4 screws, preferable like an X. Keep turning until the screw stops moving. Do not over-torque by force. Now connect the CPU cooler's 4-pin connector to CPU fan 1. Team Polkin's 2x4GB DDR4 3000 MHz cast latency 16. Push down each latch from the two DIMM slots. Align each RAM's key notch to one of the DIMM slot's notch. Push down from each side until it's fully installed. You may hear a click or see the RAM is fully inserted. Inlens Professional's 256GB M.2 2280 NVMe SSD. Install the M.2 SSD into M.2 1 slot. The M.2 setoff is the correct format, which is located at M.2 1 CT1. Remember to gently insert the SSD into the slot. Clockwise the M.2 screw until not able to turn anymore. Do not over-tighten the screw. This completes installing the M.2 SSD. Deep Cool's Matrix 30 MicroATX Mini Tower Case. Uninstall the tempered glass panel. Counterclockwise the 4 thumb screws by hand. Carefully move the tempered glass panel and place it somewhere safe. Now undo some twist ties and removing the bag of contents within the case. This will have the necessary screws to install the components. With a screwdriver, counterclockwise each screw to uninstall the 120mm case fan. It's located at the top back of the case. This allows more space or better visual when working inside the case. Not required to remove the case fan unless you had something else. Next is to uninstall the right side panel. Counterclockwise the 2 screws with a screwdriver or by hand. It feels stuck. As you can see here, I am unable to move it. I tried many attempts to no avail. I'll lay the case to its side and try to uninstall the panel this way. Once again, I was unable to move the right side panel. What came to mind next is to uninstall the front panel. From this angle of the case, try to hold the case down and pull away at the front panel's bottom section. Notice there's an area to grip. It's a bit tricky to uninstall the front panel this way, but it will work. I'm realizing why I could not move the panel. It appeared some of the thin metal hooks were bent oddly when they should be more straight. It's no surprise with cheap cases. Trying again with more force, and I hope this removes the panel. The right panel is officially uninstalled. The I/O shield, the input and output shield. Install the I/O shield to the case. Align it by each corner and push until it feels secure. Remove the two PCI slots to prepare for the GPU installation later on. EVGA's BT 450V 80 plus bronze no modular power supply. So let's install the power supply. Place the power supply onto the bottom section of the case. Remember to keep the power supply's fan facing down. The 4 power supply screws provided by the power supply. Clockwise each screw with the aligned holes. Don't completely tighten until all 4 screws are attached to the power supply. Now it's okay to tighten all the screws. Keep turning until it stops moving. Now let's route the power supply's cables through the hole. Now let's install the motherboard into the case. Notice I route the 8-pin EPS cable to be behind the motherboard. You do not have to follow my cable route. The other option is to route the 8-pin EPS cable through the very top hole. And the 6 motherboard standoffs are the correct format for a MicroATX motherboard. Align the motherboard with the standoffs in the I/O shield. The 6 motherboard screws. The washers are not required. Clockwise each screw, but do not fully tighten them, just enough to be attached to their standoff. I'm slightly untightening with the 3 screws closest to the I/O shield. I over-tightened the bottom left screw. I need to loosen it more. That's better. The screw should be aligned between the standoff. Now finish tightening all the screws until they stop moving. Remember, do not over-torque. The 4+4-pin EPS CPU cable. This powers the processor. Next is to connect the EPS connector's 4-pin to ATX 12V. This is optional, but I'll zip tie the non-connected 4-pin to the connected 4-pin to give that clean appearance with the cable. Use a cutter plier to cut off the excess zip tie. Western Digital's Caviar Blue 1TB 7200 RPM hard drive. From the 3.5-inch drive bay cage, insert the hard drive to one of the 3.25-inch bays. Trying to align the hard drive was tight and awkward. The 3 screws for the hard drive. Clockwise each screw, but do not fully tighten them. When all the screws are attached to the hard drive, then tighten them. It's a very tight space when the power supply is installed, so you might need to use a small screwdriver or install the hard drive before the power supply. Thermaltake's Ring 12 LED white 120mm case fan. The 4 M3 screws for the front case fan, provided by the case. We are back to the case with the front section. Clockwise each screw, but do not fully tighten them. This case fan must be an intake to pull cold air inside the case. Now it's okay to tighten all the screws. I do admit this frontal fan installation feels a bit awkward. Now route the case fan's wire through the top narrow hole above it. Route the case fan's wire through the horizontal hole. Now route the case fan's wire under the motherboard. Connect the 3-pin case fan to CHA fan 2. Keep in mind this CHA fan only has 3 pins. Now let's reinstall the 120mm case fan to the back top of the case. Clockwise each screw, remember to keep this fan as exhaust. This pulls heat away and exits out of the case. This is how I manage the wire. I'll wrap the wire around the case fan, and the 4-pin Molex is zip tied. Tuck the Molex between the I/O ports and the case fan. Now connect the case fan's 3-pin connector to CHA fan 1. Next, let's reinstall the front panel back to the case. Reinsert all the front panel wires and the USB cables within the case. Route them through the same narrow hole. Align the holes with the front panel. Route all the front panel wires and the cables through the horizontal hole. The H.D. audio. This gives sound when connected to the audio jack with headphones or external speakers. Connect the H.D. audio connector to H.D. audio 1. The 2.0 USB. This is to power and use the case's 2.0 USB front port. Connect the 2.0 USB connector to USB 3.4. The 3.0 USB. This is to power and use the case's 3.0 USB front port. This particular 3.0 USB also has a 2.0 USB attached. The 2.0 USB will not be used since the motherboard can connect to a 3.0 USB. However, this helps with older motherboards that do not have a 3.0 USB. Connect the 3.0 USB connector to USB 5.6. There's a notch at the center of the 3.0 USB. Make sure this aligns with the connection. The 2.0 USB is zip tied to manage the wires. It helps to gently pre-bend the wires so it doesn't strain the connection. Back to the front panel wires, route them to where the H.D. audio in 2.0 USB wires were. Here's a diagram for the system front panel connections. The 2-pin hard drive disk LED is positive and negative. This powers an LED when a storage has activity occurring. Connect the H.D.D LED positive and negative to H.D.D LED. The 1+1 pin power LED is positive and negative. This powers the power switch LED when the computer is turned on. Connect the power LED positive and negative to P LED. The 2-pin reset switch. This powers a small button to reboot the computer. Connect the reset switch to reset. The 2-pin power switch. This powers the power button to turn on the computer on or off. Connect the power switch to PWR BTN. Gently bend and pull the excess wires behind the case. Back to the additional SATA and Molex cables, Velcro strap or zip tie these together. Place them inside the hard drive cage to be underneath the hard drive. The 24-pin ATX cable, 20 plus 4 pin. This powers the motherboard. Route the 24-pin ATX cable through the center top hole. Connect the 24-pin ATX connector to ATX PWR1. Gently bend the wires in a form of a 45-degree angle. Heard the click? It should feel secure. Make sure the connection is not left with open gaps, and the center notch should be fully overlapped with the connector. The power supply SATA cable. This powers a hard drive or a 2.5-inch solid-state drive, or an optical drive, or a fan hub. It can also be for an LED strip, or a fan controller, etc. So connect the power supply SATA to the hard drive. It looks like the long, narrow backward L shape. The 90-degree SATA cable, provided by the motherboard. This transfers data from the storage or the optical drive between the computer. Now connect the SATA cable to the hard drive. It looks like the short, narrow L shape. Route the SATA cable through the center's very bottom hole. Try to manage the wire to be flat enough when ready to reinstall the panel. It does not need to be perfect here. Now connect the straight angle SATA cable to SATA 3.4, the bottom row from the two connectors. MSI's Radeon RX 570 8GB Armor OC. Don't forget to remove the sticker on the fan, also the cover from the interface and the video port covers ahead of time. Counterclockwise the screw that is holding the PCI cover. The PCIe X16 slot. It's called the PCIe 2 from the AB350M HDV motherboard. Align the graphics card's interface to the PCIe X16 slot. Also align the GPU's PCI slots with the empty PCI slots from the case. The RX 570's two PCI brackets are thick, so try to align them with the two PCI slots from the case between the motherboard. Gently push down the GPU starting from the latch and back to the slots. Back to the two PCI screws, let's finish installing the GPU. Clockwise the two PCI screws. Do not fully turn them until both screws are attached to the PCI bracket. The 6+2 pin PCIe cable. This provides the additional required power for the graphics card. Also route the PCIe cable through the center bottom hole. The additional PCIe connector is zip-tied with the cable. Connect the 6+2 pin PCIe to the RX 570's PCIe 8-pin connector. The AC power cord, provided by the power supply. Connect the AC power cord to the power supply. Set the power switch to 1. Connect the power cord to an outlet or a power surge or UPS. If using a power surge or UPS, then don't forget to turn it on. I connected an HDMI cable from the monitor to the RX 570's HDMI port. I also connected a keyboard with a mouse touchpad. This is to make sure I can do post and go into the BIOS later on. Press the power button from the case. Don't worry, this is normal for a first-time post. It's already a good sign to see it stay power on. It may take about 40 seconds or a minute to see if it passes post. This successfully displays reboot and select proper boot device. This is good because this shows it passed the post. Press the power button again to turn off the computer. Temporarily disconnect the SATA cable from the additional storage, which is the hard drive from this computer. The USB flash drive with Windows 10 ISO ready. Insert the USB flash drive to a 3.0 USB port. Press the power button again to turn on the computer. You should see the post screen and do not press anything at this time. The computer will eventually start the Windows installation. It may take a couple or a few minutes to begin the OS installation. The waiting time took about 3 minutes to begin the process. Almost there to begin the OS installation. The language, time, and currency are set as English United States. The keyboard or input is US. Left-click Next. Left-click Install Now. From here, type in the 25-character product key. This is the OEM Windows 10 sticker, and where to find the 25-character product key. So again, type in the 25-character product key. Left-click Next. Select I accept the license terms and left-click Next. Select and left-click Custom Install Windows Only Advanced. Select Drive 0 Unallocated Space and left-click Next. This Windows 10 installation took about 2 minutes. You'll set up the administration account's name, password, and preferences. By default, it should automatically select the correct country. If it's correct, then left-click Yes. If the keyboard layout is correct, then left-click Yes. Skip the second keyboard layout. Left-click on I don't have internet. Left-click on Continue with Limited Setup. Your choice of name for the user admin account. Left-click Next. Type a password for your admin user account. Left-click Next. Retype your password, then left-click Next to confirm it. Select the following 3 security questions and type in something that you'll remember. Left-click Next when done. This is your choice, but I'm selecting No here. I decline with Cortinia, but again, your choice. I select No and Basic to all of these settings. Left-click Accept. Windows 10 is installed. There are a few more steps to do, such as partition the additional storage when it's connected and ready, adjust your user layout and add your preferred shortcuts, download your GPU's driver like the AMD driver for the RX 570, from another computer and from the motherboard's webpage, download the Realtek LAN driver for internet connection, the audio driver called Realtek High Definition Audio Driver. If you have internet connection, then do the Windows updates first. Other free downloads like LibreOffice for Office applications, CPU-Z for hardware information, HW Info 64, or the HW monitor to sense temperatures, voltages, and other information, your solid-state drive's toolbox if you're able to find it, VLC media player to watch DVDs or listen to audio if you have an optical drive. Do shut down the computer when done with the admin user account. Also disconnect the power supply's AC cord and the peripherals. Reconnect the SATA cable back to the hard drive. Back to the right panel. Remember the thin metal hooks I've spoken about being bent up? There's 6 of them total, and they had to be straightened out. Can do this by hand and pliers. Keep them horizontal. Let's reinstall the right panel. You may need to reorganize the cables until able to install the panel. The 2 screws that came with the panel. Clockwise each screw by hand. The 4 thumbnail screws for the tempered glass panel. Now reinstall the tempered glass panel. Align the panel with the 4 holes. And this completes building a tight budget gaming computer. Thanks for watching!